throw the beat up high for all my Damu riders. Sue Wolf, all my blood niggas gon' feel this one.
Sometimes you have to know that if an individual is flexing his muscles, instead of going against that individual, sometimes you have to know how to befriend a person. And what I mean by befriend a person, you never know when you might need that person on your team.
All black hat, white tee, black denim. Fresh pair of J's with them red strings in them. I bang to the boogie, bang bang. We all in the same gang, but right now this a blood thing.
Who is Junior Thomas?
Junior Thomas lived on 112th, where the bounty hunter started at. And it's a wall, maybe about 10, 15 yards from where he lived, where he gave a famous speech to all the bounty hunters when we first started, when we had our first meeting. Junior was discussing for us not to practice the ways the Crips was handling their business dealing with people in the community, such as taking cokes and taking hats. You know, he didn't want us to go out like that. He wanted us to be defenders and not offenders.
So Junior Thomas is the founder of Bounty Hunter, or one of the founding members?
Well, Percy Jackson, he's my age right now, 59, going on 60. He the one that came up with the name. And Gary Barker took the name and wrote it on the liquor store wall. And Junior Thomas took the name and put work in on it. Yes, serious work. So much serious work that Raymond Washington wanted the bishops to take Junior Thomas out.
Tell me a little bit about the Barker brothers.
Well, let me put it to you this way. This is the best way I can sum up the Barker brothers. If you ever watched The Godfather, I'm talking about the original Godfather, you know what I'm saying, Marlon Brando and his son, Michael. And Michael was, is that El Pacino? Yes, El Pacino is Michael. And Joe Barker reminded me every bit of Sonny, the oldest son. Sonny was a type of guy, if you have the video to watch The Godfather, watch Sonny's character. Sonny got killed real easy. And Sonny reminded me of a lot of people who don't have self-control. Self-control is kind of like demonic in a sense, because that means you can catch a murder and don't even try to catch a murder, because your self-control and your anger can have you strangle somebody and then you realize you done killed the person. So that's the type of person, that's the type of spirit some people have. And Joe had a spirit similar to that, to where when he do something, he lied to pick up a trash can, a stick, he lied to stomp you, anything he can get his hands on. Joe was no joke. I'm gonna tell you the truth. He got off on me one time. I was 16 and 74. He was about 20. The homies pulled me in a huddle and told me the only way he's gonna leave me alone, I have to get down with him. And as soon as he put his hands on me, you know what I'm saying, I had to defend myself to the point to where he realized that I wasn't the type of guy that was just gonna take it laying down. So we became real close, because he found out that not only would I fight him, you know what I'm saying, I would fight individuals who was in his age category, period. I believe that when you're in the gang, it's not always the people who you fighting against on the streets. Sometimes you have to fight your own homeboys, as Sookie Blood would say. There's a pecking order. And wherever place you want to be in that gang or organization, you have to fight for that sometimes. For instance, how me and Joe got real super cool. One day I'm walking down 112th in the Nickerson Garden, going towards the liquor store on Central. And you had this guy named Sandman from Baby Hustler. He was talking crazy to Joe, but he was my age. And Joe 4 years or 3 years older than this cat. So I just happened to be walking past. Joe looked at me and said, Fro, get him, Fro, get him. I can't do nothing to him because I'm too old. And I took off on the youngster that was my age. He was 16, I was 16. I put the blenders on him. He ran and everything and started screaming like a little female. And Joe liked it that. Joe's the type of person that like guys who can just handle themselves with their hands very well. Joe, he's the type of guy that also you have to go with him on a mission, man. You can't just be no bounty hunter and don't go on the mission with Joe. Joe gonna take you on the mission. If you ain't been on the mission with Joe, I really doubt if you're a real bounty hunter, because Joe will go on these type of missions. He'll take you all the way up to Real Rogers Park, or he'll take you probably downtown Los Angeles. And Joe would actually be the tutor and you would be the student. And he would show you this is how you do it. He would rush about 3 or 4 Crips with earrings in their ears, ace deuces on their hat, and all you would see is hats flying in the air, people running, leather coats falling. Joe was that type of guy where they kind of like looked at him like he was a T-Rex. Yeah, like he was a Tyrannosaurus or something. And they'd be screaming his name, and he'd still be chasing them while swinging on them. And Joe was a wild man. He had that mentality of Samson. He would fight the whole army of the Philistines. And that's the Joe Barker that I knew. Okay, I can remember it was the summer of '74, and I'm walking down the 112th towards the liquor store one night again, and I seen my homegirl, Wanda Lewis, better known as the Kleptos. That's what they called themselves back then. You had Scent, Tinker, Betty Beaver. It was about like 8, 9 of them, you know what I'm saying? They were like bounty hunter girls, but they had their own little name, the Kleptos. So they was all hanging at the liquor store. And I didn't know that Joe was in the crowd. But as I walk up towards the store on Central and 112, I noticed the homegirls. And in the midst of the homegirls, a guy come walking out the midst of them, out of the store. And when he looked at Joe in the face, he ran right into Joe, and he looked at Joe in the face, and he panicked. And Joe looked at him, and Joe looked at him like, oh my God, I got one. And the guy broke down and hollered, Joe Barker, man, I know I don't belong over here, Joe. I know I don't belong over here. Man, why did he do that? Joe grabbed the guy in the collar, snatched him up and everything away from the door, and the homegirls were screaming and hollering, saying, don't do it, Joe, don't do it, don't do it. The guy holding on Joe's wrist, screaming, Joe Barker, don't, man, I know I don't belong over here. And Joe looking at me saying, Frog, we got one. Let's take him to the clubhouse, So 1 block down the street, you know what I'm saying, in the neighborhood, right on 112th, there's a street called, I think it's Avera, something like that. There's a house right there that we used to kick it at for our little clubhouse. And we basically drug him all the way there, a block down from Central. And when Joe get him in front of the clubhouse, Joe fired on him. And the homegirls, they still on 112th looking down the street screaming, leave him alone, leave him alone. And Joe hit him again and he fall on the ground. And I put my foot on him. I ain't gonna sit here and lie, you know what I'm saying? Because when you with Joe Barker, you better do something. I guarantee you that, you know what I'm saying? So I went on and put foot on him. And ever since then, me and Joe Barker was what you call road dog, because he realized that Frog was down for the cause of getting Crips or keeping Crips out of the Nickerson Gardens.
So Joe Barker's house was ground zero for bounty hunter?
No, it wasn't. Ricky Bryant, that's Better Dog, AKA Silky Blood, 112th and Palmer Lee. His backyard had a wall, and it was called the Bounty Hunter Wall. And it was probably just as long as one of these walls right here, but it was about high as these walls right here, but it was probably around about, I'd say about 15 yards or 10 yards long. And we used to write graffiti on the wall and hide out behind the wall. If the police come or if some Crips try to come through and shoot, the wall would be our shield. We'll be there from daytime to nighttime.
Tell me about Gary Barker's character and hitting up on the wall.
Well, Gary Barker, he's what I call the educated one. He's the smooth one, smooth as silk. He reminds me of Michael Corleone, the middle brother. And Gary is very educated and highly intelligent to the point to where, from my understanding, him and Hoover Joe was in camp or YA together somewhere, and they was so cool to where Hoover Joe was always following behind him, from my understanding. Now, how do I know this? Because some homies told me about it. You know, I wasn't there, you know what I'm saying? But I know Gary's character. Gary is not the type of person to where he have to fight an individual to prove that he's a bounty hunter. You know what I'm saying? Gary's the type of person that he is more mind thinking than he is from the shoulders. And what I mean by that, he know how to choose his battles. And that's what's wrong with people today. They don't know how to choose their battle. As soon as you see somebody, you got to do something. It ain't always the case. That's called reactionary. Sometimes you have to study a person. For real. That's what they do in the Army. They study their enemies. So Gary has intelligence on his side. You know what I'm saying? You can call him a CIA, whatever, but he believes in intelligence. And if you, only way you know your enemy is by knowing your enemy. For real.
So what happened when he wrote on the wall?
Well, I would say like in 73, the summer of 73, the liquor store right on 112th and Central, he wrote, "Welcome to Bounty Hunter City, population 300. Now, this is where it gets tricky. He said 300. Why would he say 300? Why would I remember 300? Because I was there. I remember looking at the wall. You know what I'm saying? I was in the boys' home out in Riverside, but I was coming home every 60 days, and I used to see his graffiti. He also had something else, I believe, that I think was his. You know, the Power Rules got Guess Who, Power Rule, Bishops, What's Up, Bishops. Well, this is what the Bounty Hunters had, because we believed that we were like heroes of the neighborhood. We used to say, never fear, Bounty Hunter here, and that was our slogan. So we were like folklores of the Nickerson Gardens. You know what I'm saying? We was, protectors of the projects.
Okay, tell me about Junior Thomas' leadership against the PJs.
Yes, his Junior Thomas, he had a little thing against the PJs dealing with Anthony Baylock and Billy Ho, because when we came bounty hunters and there wasn't no Crips at all in Watts, they were the 456, and then they became the PJs. So we didn't have no Jordan Down to trip on. We started tripping on the PJ Crips, and when we started tripping on them, Junior Thomas, he took off on their leader, which is Anthony Baylock at the time. And I think Anthony Baylock allegedly got shot in his private parts. And I'm not gonna say the trigger man, but it's only obvious, isn't it? Only obvious.
What year do you give PJ Watts?
PJ Watts came out probably, how can I say? It's probably 72. Probably they was out before the JDs. And if they wasn't out before the JD, we had so much love for the Pygmies that we probably still wasn't tripping on them in Tyrone. But the PJs was like alienated to us.
Okay, think back. Was you in junior high school or high school when you first found out about PJ Watts?
I was in the probably ninth grade, ninth or eighth, yeah, ninth grade. I was in the ninth grade.
What high school did you go to?
Oh, I went to Locke.
What gangs went to Locke in the early 70s?
Oh, when I was there, you had Devil and At This Park. They was there together. And you had the Q102s, you had 118 Block, you had 99th Main Street Crips, you had the 118th Main Street Crip, Little George, Peabody. He was going to Gompers at the time. He was in the 9th when I was in the 11th, but he was coming up there with the Devil-Lanes. And I introduced myself to him and started hanging out with Peabody over his mama house on 109th in Denver. And you had Rubber Leg, you had also Choo Choo, you had Spud, you had Bear, you had Preach from 112th Mafia Lane, right there off 112th near Imperial and Fig. I used to hang out over there too on 112th and Fig with the Mafia Lane. Peabody mother is a nice lady. They called her Mama Lane at one time, but now they call her Corn. And I just seen her when I first got out of prison about 9 years ago. Nice lady. You had Art from At This Park. Art was responsible for starting the Miller Gangsters in the 80s. A lot of At This Park boys came down to the Millers where he was living at, and they turned Miller Gangster and formed a hedge around Art protection, because he needed some boys down there dealing with them cargo parks. And Art is a soldier, got to give it to him.
So Millers and Athens always been tight?
Yes, because they wanted the same.
Did you know Mouse from Athens?
Yes, I know Big Mouse. Big Mouse used to come and kick it with us in the Nickerson Gardens. You know, he know my homegirl Angie, Spawn's sister. Yeah, Yancey's sister, Angie and him, they were pretty cool. And I met Mouse through Angie, probably around about like in the 80s sometime. He's an OG. He's one of their original triple OGs from Athens.
Do you ever remember Athens claiming Pyru?
Never, not one time. I have a homeboy named Percy Jackson who gave the name Bounty Hunter. He hooked the Bounty Hunters up with the Athens part like in '73. And they used to go down Main Street doing some terrible things to the main streets.
Oh, tell me about the kitchen Crips over there by the Nickersons.
To be honest with you, I don't too much know about them cats. I have seen their graffiti. I have seen a couple of them, but that was they was like a thorn in the side of the Millers, I believe. We never had no beef. Then again, I think Bolo generation, the Deuce Line Bounty Hunters over there coming off of Stanford had problems with them cats. But my generation, nah, they too young for us.
J-Rock now banging on records. Homeboy, I'm just repping my section. Hips, you can say cuz on the radio, and J-Rock will say blood everywhere he go.